welcome to the 20th. I'm very excited to start this vlog. It is the Reading Rush, which is an annual readathon that happens every year, started by Raylene and Ariel. But if you're here, you probably know about it. I have already put my TBR where I've explained everything. However, I am gonna start reading now, and I'm super excited. Actually, I'm not. I'm not excited. I am starting to read The Great Gatsby, and it has, yes, the ugliest version of all time on it. Like, what is this even? I don't even know. But I got it for really cheap, so that's something. I am not excited to read this because I don't like the concept of this book, but I want to read it to understand whether I just have some weird bias. But the concept of this book, from what I know, is that this book is set in the 1920s, in the Prohibition era, and in the US. And essentially what happens is that there's this man called Gatsby who is very, very rich, and he throws a lot of parties, and in particular he throws parties so that he can see this one girl who he's in love with, who's also married. So I don't know how I feel about that, but time will tell, because I'm going to read this book today finally. And yeah, cool, let's get to it. Hello. I fell asleep because I was having one of the worst headaches ever after lunch, but I'm feeling better now. I am going to, I am about 80 pages into the book, and I'm actually weirdly liking it. I mean, I like the writing, and I think they're definitely trying to paint certain characters as good and bad. So that's interesting. But apart from that, I thought this book was going to be about one thing, and it turns out it's not, and there's more depth to things. So that just goes to show that you shouldn't have weird biases and judge a book by its movie trailer. Anyway, I'm gonna wake up completely and then I'm gonna get to reading, but also I'm going to now shoot some of the Instagram challenges thingies. So yes, I'm gonna do that, and I'll catch up with you next when I have hopefully finished the book. Goodbye. Hi, good morning. I finished reading The Great Gatsby. So what I thought of this book, like what I thought it was going to be, was very different than what it turned out to be, if you get what I mean. So the whole idea of, as I said, like, I completely judged this wrong, and I think the author in the very beginning tries very hard to tell you about which characters are good, which characters are not that great, in the beginning, and tries to make you empathize with their situation. The book is basically, the themes were very interesting, wherein it covered, like, basically the class divide, money and capitalism, and also a bunch of other things, like uh, the fickleness of people, when people, I've made notes. Okay, so I'm gonna just, yeah. So I've written the class divide and about the American dream. Yeah, so essentially this was about Gatsby trying to get the achieve the American dream, be rich, famous, and just like much loved, and he kind of gets there, but then what happens is that you see the fickle-mindedness of people, and their fleeting loyalties, when they don't get what they came for, which was all the parties and all of that sort of stuff. So, I mean, it's definitely interesting. I think that, as I said, there were a lot of themes that were covered in this, and I don't really want to cover it so much. But also, the writing wasn't bad at all. I think the writing was pretty good, very easy. It's a very, very easy read. And pretty fast as well. It's about 200 pages. However, I still give this a 3-star, and a 3-star for me is that I liked it. I did not really like it or love it. So that's where I stand. I'm kind of neither here nor there. Things have worked in this, in terms of the writing was good, the themes that were covered were good. A lot of it, the character arcs and what they would try to say in it was also good, but something just didn't work for me, and I can't quite put my finger on it right now. But 3 stars isn't bad. Anyway, I move on to my next read, which is The Outsiders. And I'm excited to read this because this is also another cult classic in the US. And it's quite short as well. So let us see how that goes. It's 215 pages, so that's good. And yeah, I will start reading as soon as I finish my chai. And then we'll get to it. Okay, bye. Hi, it is many hours later after I finished this book, and I think it broke me. I am over such a short period of time, this book has just taken me in. The characters I loved, just their dynamic I loved, and all the book had to say I loved. So what's not to love about this book? I can't think of anything. But essentially this book follows this 14-year-old boy called Pony Boy. He is, I think this book is set in like the 1960s in the US somewhere. And he is, his family is essentially his brothers, because who are older than him. The oldest being 20, the middle being I think 16, and his parents have died in a car crash. And then essentially it's the brothers and then the friends who are part of this gang, though he doesn't really think of them as a gang, but more of this family that they have, and all of them are just so different and so interesting. And then basically it's the greasers, which is them, which are of a lower economic background. And then there are the Socs. So it's pronounced it's spelled SOCS, which is short for socials. So I'm just gonna call it Soc because socks sounds weird. And so the Socs are of the higher economic background, and they essentially run around and cause havoc because like they have time and money and they can get away with a lot of stuff, but essentially they have this rivalry of sorts, and then a lot happens, and I don't want to spoil it for the ones who haven't seen it. I'm saying read the book, because yeah, stuff happens, and there was one part that broke me, right? And then right after that, something else happens that broke me even more, and I was like, why are you doing this to me? And it's a really short book. It's 215 pages, and uh yeah, I liked the themes discussed in this book. I liked that the basically about the economic and social divide, about social justice, and basically police brutality, as well as like domestic violence, child abuse. A bunch of things were kind of covered. So just trigger warnings for a lot of violence, a lot of there were kids like smoking when they were 13, 14, so it's a little strange to kind of see. However, it was just, if you keep those aside and just listen to what the book is trying to do, you will really enjoy it. And yeah, also I did a little bit of research and I found out that S.E. Hinton was only 15 when she started writing this book, and she published it when she was 17 years old. I mean, what am I doing in my life? But anyway, I don't know if I'm gonna pick up a book immediately, but I have finished a book today, so that is good. I feel accomplished of sorts, if not broken. So I will catch up with you later and you'll see what I'm up to. Okay, bye. Hello, so it is a little later now, and I am back in my pajamas. I wore jeans today for the first time after, I think, 50 years. Though seriously, I think after like 6 months. So that was interesting. I wore it for this Instagram challenge of the reading rush, and it was fun. And yeah, anyway, I've now decided what book I will read next, and I'm gonna start reading it today because why not? And that is oh, you can't see the name. Slapstick or Lonesome No More by Kurt Vonnegut. And this is satire. And I tried to look for what this book is about, but it doesn't say much anywhere on the internet unless I go to look for spoilers, which I don't want to. But this book is told from the perspective of the last president of the US, or the current king of Manhattan. So basically it's the same person, and he was the last president and is now the current king of Manhattan. And it's basically this dystopian satire story that is told, and it's quite tiny. So, but Kurt Vonnegut always ends up doing some weird shit, which is ultimately amazing. So I'm excited to read it, and I will let you know how it goes. Okay, bye. Hello, so I am sitting downstairs. I came down because someone told me that a parcel has come for us, and I got very excited thinking that it's going to be about books, but no, it was just this stupid ass shit for my mum. Oh shit, I hope yeah. Yeah, anyway. Yeah, so it was this stupid thing for my mum, and yeah, so I'm just instead gonna take advantage of it not raining right now, and I'll just sit here and read for a little bit because it's so pretty downstairs, and there's no one really around, so that's good because it's like 12 and no one comes down 12. So I've got my book, yeah, and oh, and I'm gonna read. And people are looking at me, but it's cool. I don't care. It is now, I think, 2 o'clock in the morning, and I have just finished, not just, like a while back, finished my book, which is Kurt Vonnegut's Slapstick or Lonesome No More. And by reading this tiny 200-ish page book, I have realized why I love Kurt Vonnegut so much, and why he stays with you regardless of whether you remember what happened in the plot or not, because his writing is so funny. It just makes you feel so good, and heard, sort of, in a weird way. Um, and I really enjoyed reading this book. This book essentially follows this. I don't know if I told you what this book is about, but I'm still gonna tell you just in case. So this book follows this man who I said was the king, is now the king of Manhattan, but he was the president of the United States. And it follows his journey. He is now one of the very few people who live in uh, New York right now because of something called the Green Plague and an Albanian fever that took place, which is interesting. But it doesn't really touch upon that as much at all, in fact. Very little, and the reason why it happened is very, very funny, weird, I don't know. But yeah, so that's basically what happens, and he basically starts recounting. He's about 100 years now old now, and he starts recounting his story as to how he became what he became, how he became president, how he became a pediatrician, and how he came to live and be the king of Manhattan. And essentially, in the first chapter, which is basically the prologue, Kurt Vonnegut tells you about what he was going through while he was writing this. So he had just lost his sister, and he was basically grappling with death and the concepts of loneliness and companionship, and that shows throughout this book. You clearly see his thoughts on even religion or just a bunch of things, and I just loved the way he went about it. So Kurt Vonnegut's writing has always been very anecdotal. So if, for example, you see over here, it'll be like this much, and then it moves on to the next thing, and that's one anecdote, and then the next anecdote, and like that's it, right? Like, so it's very, very short, so it doesn't really take up too much of like your mind space, really, and you just kind of zoom through it. So which is why it was a very good choice for this readathon. But while being absurd and just weird, if I may say so, it touches upon such important themes and topics that really makes you think at the same point of time, which is definitely something which I appreciate so much about him, and the way this book in particular is written. So basically, this book has just made me want to go and find all other Kurt Vonnegut books and read them ASAP. And which reminds me, I have to find my book of Slapstick, no, Slapstick, Slaughterhouse 5, because that was the first Kurt Vonnegut book that I read, and I read it probably a decade ago, and I don't know where it is, and I wanted to reread it for this classics thing that I have this month. So let's see, I have to find that, and then I have to like find all the other Kurt Vonnegut books because I just love his writing. Anyway, as you've noticed, I'm still in the same clothes, which means that I have actually not had a bath, but I finished this book, so that's great. Did I already say this? I don't even fucking know, but I wanted to point that out because I know that you might wonder. But it's fine. What is it's cool, you know? So I could end this here. However, the organizers of the Reading Rush have this really fun tag that they have made, and I may want to do it. So maybe the next part of this is going to be that tag video of me just answering a bunch of questions that they've put forward to people to answer, which is going to be book related. So if you want to watch that, stay tuned. I'm going to go like look for those books now because there are, yeah. Hi, welcome to the Racing to Read tag. I just find this such a funny tag name because I hate running. Anything to do with physical exercise, I hate, but I love reading. So this is like a weird mixture. It actually reminds me of this joke meme that I saw on Instagram that I'm gonna put here but also read out aloud, which is, in 2017 I didn't jog, in 2018 I didn't jog, in 2019 I didn't jog, in 2020 I still haven't jogged. This is a running joke. I just find it so funny because it's true. Also, if you haven't noticed, I've put my disco light on. I do have a disco ball in my room, which is something I wanted. Um, I don't know if you've seen this TV show called Roswell. And there was this part where the main protagonist puts a disco ball in her room, and I saw it when I was 7 years old, and I was like, yep, that's gonna happen when I get a room of my own. I'm gonna put a disco ball in it. It's gonna be amazing. And it is amazing. It's quite nice. Anyway, moving on to the actual tag. So the first question is warm up. A book that stretches your mind, and I had no idea what this might mean, so I'm just gonna play it safe and choose Sapiens by Yuval Noah Harari. Now this is a non-fiction book that basically explains to you how we have come to be who we are as humankind. So it explains a lot of different things, like where even humans started and how we became who we are, the law of religion, why we started living in cities, just a bunch of things. So it just goes from like the very beginning to where we are now in the permanent revolution and just a bunch of other stuff. And I just found this to be a really interesting read, and it really helps you to understand. I question a lot of things in life, and it helped me understand why those are. So that was really interesting, and it definitely did stretch my mind back to the olden days. Okay, I'm gonna hurry this up now. Okay, start line. What is a book that you started but never finished? Now I actually have one of those. Usually I hate DNFing books. However, I started reading The Paradoxical Prime Minister by Shashi Tharoor, and this is essentially about Modi ji, who's our lovely Prime Minister, and about how the different things that he has done in his term as Prime Minister and now in his second term. And it is a super fascinating read. However, it really depressed me because I was just like, holy shit, like this book came out right before he became when he was running for Prime Minister again for his second term, and then I was reading it to just be like, oh my god, I should know all my facts. And then Modi won again, and then I was just like, god damn it. So I'll read it. I just find it a little depressing right now. So there's that. The next question is Sprint, a book that you read really quickly. And for that, I would say Josh and Hazel's Guide to Not Dating by Christina Lauren. Now, this book I read, it's like a short contemporary romance, and I finished it in a couple of hours. I did not even keep it down. I remember reading this on a train journey from Colombo to Trincomalee, and I miss traveling, but it was lovely. It is such a fun, cute book with some really lovable characters. The next question is a marathon, a long book that, your favorite long book. Okay, and for that, I would have to say the Century Trilogy. Now, the Century Trilogy is The Fall of the Giants, which is yay thick, the Edge of Eternity, which is yay thick, and then Winter of the World, which is yay thick. Okay, so in totality, it comes to, I'm trying to, it comes to this much, okay? But these books are amazing. They're so good. So it's basically a trilogy that follows, the first book is about the First World War, the second book is about the Second World War, and the third one is about the Civil War and the Cold War. So this is historical fiction, and I absolutely love this series. Essentially, what it does is that it puts it characters from various different very important countries in these situations and these wars. So for example, it has characters from the US, it has characters in the UK, Russia, Germany, what are the other ones, like the other characters. And essentially, like, the first book follows it's not the first book. The first book, and basically it follows their story and puts them in very real situations that happened in the war. And then as the years go by, you kind of see their um the next generation kind of intermingling, and like their generation also intermingling, and it's just crazy. And I love it because it essentially puts a face to very real aspects that happen in the world. And I just love it. I just love historical fiction in general, but also these books are so pacey. Yes, they are so thick, but they're really pasty, and yeah, you will run through it. So if you don't mind these chunkers, then I think definitely give it a shot, because I love these books. Also, it's a good, like, weight like this, like I can just, it goes anyway. The next question is hurdles. What is a book that had ups and downs? And for this, I will choose The Far Field by Madhuri Vijay. Now, this book, I feel, has ups and downs in terms of a lot of people don't like the main character. And I get that she can be a little unlikable. However, the character reminded me a lot of me. And so that was confusing for me. However, this this book is basically about this girl who has lost her mother and is going through a lot of grief. And then she remembers basically this one man who her mother was really fond of, who's from Kashmir, and she basically, in that grief, decides to go and find that man, and she travels to Kashmir. And basically it's a lot about grief, but also the political scenario in Kashmir at that moment. And I just thought that it was very, 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 very well written. And I really liked it. However, you did have to grapple with the decisions that the main character takes, which is why you were like, okay. But I loved this book. I gave it a 5-star. The next question is Finish Line, a book that you were proud to finish. And for this, I will say, ooh, falling. Anna Karenina by Leo Tolstoy. I just finished this book this year, and it's a little bit of a chunker, and it's a lot to kind of deal with, but I was very surprised at how much I liked it, and that I could actually go through it pretty fast. Not pretty fast, okay, it took me like 2 weeks, but still, I read it in 2 weeks. I was very proud of myself once I was done with it, and I liked it even. The next question is Gold Medal, a book that you read, the best book you read during a readathon. Now that is very tough to choose. However, the first book that ever came to my mind while thinking about this was a book that I read during the stay-at-home reading rush, which was the first ever reading rush that I took part of, and that is 6 Acres and a Third by Fakir Mohan Sirapati. I don't know if it's zooming in. Is it? I don't know. Anyway, so this book is a translated Indian book, and is basically satire, which talks about feudalism. And there were so many parts in this book where I laughed out loud because it was so fucking funny, but at the same point of time, it just really hit the nail on the head on like feudalism and social and economic divides and just a bunch of other stuff. And it was a good time. It was a really good time, and I really enjoyed this book. Cool. And the last question is Participation Ribbon, an underrated book you wish got more attention. Now, of course, I have 3 books that I want to mention, so I will go through them very quickly. One is Fierce Femmes and Notorious Liars. Now, this book I read very recently for the Queer Lit Readathon, I think, yeah. And I loved this book. It's basically about a trans girl who escapes into this fantastical world to kind of be herself. And the book is written in prose, is written in poetry, and is written in letters, and it's quite short and a very easy read, but packs a punch. And yeah, it really makes you feel things. So I think it's also a very, very easy read, so I would definitely recommend. The second book I want to recommend is Year of the Weeds by Siddhartha Sharma. Now, this book follows two children in Odisha. One is a girl of a upper caste IAS officer who has moved to Odisha for the first time, and the second is a Gond boy who is basically a tribal boy who lives in the hills of Odisha close to her house, and he basically is this girl's gardener of sorts. So this book talks about the tribal life, and about also it dwells into like capitalism and how people don't value tribal lives and their beliefs, and basically value money more than anything else. And I think it explains it in this really sweet, cute way, which is like easily digestible and understood. And I just really liked it, so I want to recommend it to everyone. The third book I want to recommend is The Anatomy of Hate by Revathi Kaul. Now, this book is not an easy book under any circumstance. It basically follows lives of a few people during the Gujarat riots, and it is essentially true stories of what happened but told in a fictionalized sort of way. Revathi Kaul actually works with a lot of them and basically decided to tell the story. The Gujarat riots were this horrific time where there was basically clash between Hindus and Muslims in India, and Hindus, due to various things that happened, decided to basically mass murder Muslims in Gujarat, and it was a terrible, terrible time. But this book is so important to read, and I read this book in a day, and you just can't put it down, even though the contents of it is so heavy. But it's just a great read, and it'll give you so much of an insight in terms of what happened. And yeah, it's a good one. So anyway, that is the end of my vlog, of my tag. I hope you enjoyed this in my cool, fun disco ball room. And yeah, you will see a couple of my other vlogs go up, I think, on Monday now, which I will basically vlog for the next week for the reading rush. And I hope you had fun, and stay tuned and subscribe, and leave a like and a comment. I don't know. I don't know what YouTubers do. That. Okay, bye.